Hello and welcome back to my channel. And in the last video, we started the chapter on history of the struggle of the North India, struggle of the empires in North India. And in continuation of that, we'll start with a paragraph for Mewar today. So let's get started. The rise of Mewar during the 15th century was an important factor in the political life of North India. We've seen how, after being ousted from Ajmer, Chauhans had shifted to Ranthambore and set up a powerful state. With the conquest of Ranthambore by Alauddin Khilji, the power of the Chauhans and Rajputs in Rajputana had finally come to an end. From its ruins, a number of new states arose. The state of Marwar, with its capital at Jodhpur, founded in 1465, was one of these. Marwar actually rose from the disintegration of Ranthambore when Alauddin Khilji captured it, and the Chauhans were basically the Chauhan kingdom basically came to an end. Another state of conquest in the area was the Muslim principality of Nagpur. Ajmer, which had been the seat of power of the Muslim governors, changed hands several times and was a bone of contention among the Rajput states. The mastery of eastern Rajputana was also in dispute, the ruler of Delhi being deeply interested in this area. The early history of the state of Mewar is obscure. The virtual founder of Mewar is supposed to be Bapa Raval of the Gehlot clan, who is said migrated from Gujarat in the 7th century and dominated the southwestern part of Rajasthan. The Gehils ruled from Chittor to the time of Ratan Singh, who was ousted by Alauddin Khilji. Chittor then passed into hands of the Sisodias, who had been feudatories of the Guhils. During the last quarter of the 14th century and the first quarter of the 15th century, Rao Lakha and Mughal made Mewar the most powerful state in Rajasthan. The ruler who raised it to the status of power to be reckoned with was Rana Kumbha from 1433 to 68. After cautiously consolidating his position by defeating his internal rivals, Kumbha renewed efforts for the conquest of Bundi, Kota, and Dungarpur on the Gujarat borders. Kota had earlier been paying allegiance to Malwa and Dungarpur to Gujarat. This brought him into direct conflict with both of these kingdoms. There were other reasons for the conflict too. The Khan of Nagaur, who had been attacked by Rana Kumbha, had appealed for help to the ruler of Gujarat. The Rana had also given shelter at his court to a rival of Mahmud Khilji and even attempted to install him on the Malwa throne. In retaliation, Mahmud Khalji had given shelter and active encouragement to some of the rivals of Rana, such as his brother Mughal. We could see that Mewar came into prominence under the rule of Rana Kumbha, and there were many internal conflicts going on. However, there were external conflicts from Gujarat and Malwa as well. We could see that Mahmud Khilji of Malwa actually gave shelter to one of Rana's rival, who was called his brother Mughal. So the conflict with Gujarat and Malwa occupied Kumbha throughout his reign. During most of the time, Rana also had to contend with the Rathors of Marwar. Marwar was under Mewar occupation, but soon it became independent after successful struggle waged under the leadership of Rao Jodha. Although sorely pressed from all sides, Rana Kumbha was largely able to maintain his position in Mewar. Kumbhalgarh was besieged a couple of times by Gujarat forces, while Mahmud Khilji was able to raid as far inland as Ajmer and install his own governor there. Rana was able to repulse these attacks and retain possession of most of his conquests, with the exception of some of the outlying areas such as Ranthambore. Rana Kumbha's achievement in facing two such powerful states against all odds was no small achievement. Kumbha was a patron of learned men and was himself a learned man. He composed a number of books, some of which can still be read. The ruins of his palace and the Victory Tower, Kirti Stamp, which he built at Chittor, show that he was an enthusiastic builder as well. So this is about Rana Sanga, who has built the Victory Tower called the Kirti Stambh at Chittor. He dug several lakes and reservoirs for irrigation purposes. Some of the temples built during his period show that the art of stone cutting, sculpture, etc. were still at high level. Kumbha was murdered by his son Uda in order to gain the throne. Though Uda was soon ousted, he left a bitter trail. After a long fratricidal conflict with his brothers, Rana Sanga, a grandson of Kumbha, ascended the Gaddi of Mewar in 1508. The most important development between the death of Kumbha and the rise of Sanga was the rapid internal disintegration of Malwa. The ruler Mehmud II had fallen out with Medini Rai, the powerful Rajput leader of eastern Malwa, who had helped him to gain the throne. The Malwa ruler appealed for help to Gujarat, while Medni Rai repaired to the court of Rana Sanga for help. In a battle in 1517, the Rana defeated Mehmud II and carried him a prisoner to Chittor. It is claimed that he released him after 6 months, keeping one of his sons as hostage. Eastern Malwa, including Chanderi, passed under the overlordship of Rana Sanga. The developments in Malwa alarmed the Lodi rulers of Delhi, who were keenly watching the situation. The Lodi ruler Ibrahim Lodi invaded Mewar, but suffered a sharp reverse at the hands of Rana Sanga at Khatoli. Ibrahim Lodi withdrew in order to consolidate his internal position. Meanwhile, Babur was knocking at the gates of India. Thus, by 1525, the political situation in North India was changing rapidly, and a decisive conflict for supremacy in North India seemed to be inevitable. So, here is a political map of India during the 15th century. We could see the kingdom of Mewar over here, with Chittor as its prominent city. Gujarat is right next to Mewar, and there is Malwa. So Mewar was basically in conflict with these two regions simultaneously, and the Lodi Empire keenly watched the developments over here in order to gain prominence over whole of North India. As we could see, towards the starting of 1525, the developments led to the uh, influx of the Timurid dynasty, from which Babur was about to enter India. Northwest and North India, the Sharkis, the Lodi Sultans, and Kashmir. As we've seen, after the invasion of Timur, Sultan Mehmud Tughlaq fled from Delhi and took shelter first in Gujarat and then in Malwa. By the time he decided to return, the prestige of the throne of Delhi had been shattered. In the neighborhood of Delhi itself, ambitious nobles and zamindars asserted their independence. Amongst the first to assert independence in the Ganga Valley was Malik Sarwar, a prominent noble in the time of Firuz Tughlaq. Malik Sarwar had been the wazir for some time and then had been nominated to the eastern areas with the title Malik ur Sharq, Lord of the East. His successors came to be called the Shakis after his title. The Shaki sultans fixed their capital at Jaunpur in eastern Uttar Pradesh, which they beautified with magnificent palaces, mosques, and mausoleums. Only a few of these mosques and mausoleums survive now. They show that the Shaki sultans did not just copy the Delhi style of architecture; they created a magnificent style of their own, marked by lofty gates and huge arches. The Shaki sultans were great patrons of learning and culture. Poets and men of letters, scholars and saints assembled at Jaunpur and shed lustre on it. In course of time, Jaunpur came to be known as the Shiraz of the East. So this is about Jaunpur. Jaunpur came to be known as the Shiraz of the East, basically as a tribute to the uh, Shaki sultans and their patronage of learning and poets, learned men, poets, etc. Malik Muhammad Jaisi, the author of the well-known Hindi work Padmavat, lived at Jaunpur. So this is of utmost importance to us. Malik Muhammad Jaisi was the author of the famous book Padmavat, Hindi work Padmavat, and he lived in Jaunpur, which came under the reign of Sharqi sultans. Jaunpur also called the Siraz of the East. So these are very important keywords for us to consider for the examination. The Sharqi Sultanate lasted for less than a century. At its height, it extended from Aligarh in western Uttar Pradesh to Darbhanga in the north Bihar, and from the boundary of Nepal in the north to the Bundelkhand in the south. Sharqi rulers were eager to conquer Delhi, but they were not successful in doing so. With the establishment of the Lodhis in Delhi towards the middle of the 15th century, the Sharqi rulers were gradually put on the defensive. They lost most of the areas in western Uttar Pradesh and exhausted themselves in a series of bitter but futile assaults on Delhi. At length, in 1484, Behlul Lodi, the ruler of Delhi, occupied Jaunpur and annexed the Sharqi kingdom. The Sharqi king lived on and as the king lived on as an exile at Chunar for some time and died broken-hearted after repeated failures in regaining his kingdom. So the ruler of Delhi in 1484, Behlul Lodi, actually occupied Jaunpur and annexed the Sharqi kingdom, thereby sending the Sharqi ruler to exile, where even after many attempts to restore the kingdom, he failed multiple times. The Sharqi rulers maintained law and order over a large tract following the collapse of the government in Delhi. They successfully prevented the rulers of Bengal in extending their control over eastern Uttar Pradesh. Above all, they established a cultural tradition which continued long after the downfall of the Sharqis. After the Timurid invasion, a new dynasty called the Sayyid dynasty arose in Delhi. A number of Afghan Sardars established themselves in Punjab. The most important of these was Behlul Lodhi, who had been granted the Iqta of Sirhind. Behlul Lodhi checked the growing power of the Khokhars, a fierce warlike tribe which lived in the salt ranges. Soon he dominated the entire Punjab. Called in to help the ruler of Delhi against an impending attack by the ruler of Malwa, Behlul stayed on. Before long, his men took over the control of Delhi. Behlul formally crowned himself in 1451 when the ruler of Delhi died in exile. Thus ended the Sayyid dynasty. The Lodi dominated the upper Ganga valley and the Punjab from the middle of the 15th century. As distinct from the earlier Delhi rulers who were Turks, Lodhis were Afghans. Although the Afghans formed a large group in the army of the Delhi Sultanate, very few Afghan nobles had been accorded important positions. So, unlike the previous traditions which were going on at Delhi for the seat of the throne, the earlier rulers were basically Turks. However, the new dynasty of the Lodhis basically had their lineage from Afghans. And we could see that Afghans formed a large group in the Delhi Sultanate, even though they were not accorded important positions, and now there was a ruler who was an Afghan. So the growing importance of Afghan in North India was shown by the rise of the Afghan rule in Malwa. In South, they held important positions in the Bahmani kingdom. Behlul Lodi's energies were occupied mainly in the contest against the Shaki rulers. Finding himself in a weak position, Behlul invited the Afghans of Rome to come to India so that they will get rid of the ignominy of poverty and shall gain ascendancy. The Afghan historian Abbas Sarwani adds, on receipt of these farmans, the Afghans of Rome came like locusts to join service of Sultan Behlul. This may be an exaggeration, but the incursion of a large number of Afghans not only enabled Behlul to defeat the Shirkis, it changed the complexion of the Muslim society in India, making the Afghans a very numerous and important element in it, both in South and North India. So the Afghans basically there was a large influx of Afghan during Behlul Lodi's rule, and it was basically first of all to counter the kingdom of Sharqi rulers. But we could see their prominence in North as well as South India equally, and this changed the complexion of the Muslim society in India. So there was a larger chunk of people, the Indian Muslims, who were now Afghans. The most important Lodi Sultan was Sikandar Lodi from 1489 to 1517, a contemporary of Mehmud Begarha of Gujarat and of Rana Sanga of Mewar. Sikandar Lodi geared the kingdom of Delhi for the coming struggle for power with these states. He tried to subdue the Afghan Sardars who had a sturdy sense of tribal independence and were not accustomed to look upon the Sultan as more than a first among equals. Sikandar made the nobles stand before him in order to impress them with their superior status. When a royal order was sent, all the nobles had to come out of the town to receive it with due honor. All those who held jagirs had to submit accounts regularly. Drastic punishments were given to those who embezzled money or were corrupt. Sikandar Lodi had only limited success in his efforts to control the nobles. At his death, Behlul Lodi had divided the kingdom among his sons and relations. Though Sikandar had been able to undo this after a hard struggle, the idea of a partition of the empire among the sons of the ruler persisted among the Afghans. Sikandar Lodi was able to establish efficient administration in his kingdom. He laid great emphasis on justice, and all the highways of the empire were made safe from robbers and bandits. The prices of essential commodities were remarkably cheap. Sultan took keen interest in agriculture. He abolished the octroi duty on grains and established a new measurement of the yard called the Qazi Sikandari, which continued to prevail till the Mughal time. The rent rolls prepared in this time formed the basis of the rent rolls of Sher Shah later on. Sikandar Lodi is regarded as an orthodox and even a bigoted king. He sternly forbade the Muslims from following practices which were against the Sharia Islamic law, such as women visiting the graves of saints or processions being taken out in the memory of saints. He imposed the jizya on Hindus and executed a Brahmin for holding that the Hindu and Muslim scriptures were equally sacred. He also demolished a few well known Hindu temples during his campaign, such as the temple at Nagarkot. So he was basically an orthodox and a bigoted ruler who just wanted his kingdom to be on lines with the Sharia law, the Islamic law, and he had been a reason for the demolition of many of the Hindu temples, and most of them were destroyed because he didn't want the religions to be at par with each other, which can be seen from the execution of a Brahmin holding that the Hindus and Muslim scriptures were equally sacred. He also imposed jizya on the Hindus, and his temple demolition of the temple at Nagarkot is well known. Sikandar Lodi gave magnificent grants to scholars, philosophers, and men of letters so that cultured people of all climes and countries, including Arabia and Iran, flocked to his court. Due to the Sultan's efforts, a number of Sanskrit words were translated into Persian. He was also interested in music and had a number of rare Sanskrit words or music translated into Persian. During his time, a large number of Hindus took to learning Persian and were recruited to various administrative posts. And thus, the process of cultural rapprochement between the Hindu and Muslims continued apace during his reign. Sikandar Lodi also extended his dominions by conquering Dholpur and Gwalior. It was during these operations that, after careful survey and deliberations, Sikandar Lodi selected the site for the city of Agra. In 1506, the town was meant to command the area of eastern Rajasthan and route to Malwa and Gujarat. In course of time, Agra became a large town and a second capital of the Lodis. So he was the one who actually selected the city of Agra as a town where he could command the area of eastern Rajasthan and also the routes of Gujarat and Malwa. In due time, It became the second capital of the Lodhis and flourished as a large town. The growing interest of Sikandar in eastern Rajasthan and Malwa was shown by his taking the Khan of Nagaur under his protection and by trying to make Ranthambores transfer its allegiance from Malwa to Delhi. His successor Ibrahim Lodi even led a campaign against Mewar, which, as has been noted earlier, was repulsed. The growing power of the Rana in Malwa, Rana Sanga, the growing power of Rana in Malwa, Rana Sanga was from Mewar, and the extension of his power towards Agra and Bayana presaged a conflict between Mewar and the Lodhis. It is difficult to say what the outcome of this conflict would have been if power had not intervened. Kashmir, in an account of North India in the 15th century, would be incomplete without mentioning the Kingdom of Kashmir. The beautiful valley of Kashmir was for long a forbidden land for all outsiders. According to Al Biruni, entry into Kashmir was not allowed even to the Hindus, who were not known personally to the nobles there. During the period, Kashmir was known to be a center of Shaivism. However, the situation changed with the ending of Hindu rule around the middle of the 14th century. The devastating attack on Kashmir in 1320 by the Mongol leader Dalucha was a prelude to it. It is said that Dalucha ordered a wholesale massacre of men while women and children were enslaved and sold to the merchants of Central Asia. The towns and villages were ravaged and plundered and set on fire. The hapless Kashmir government could offer no opposition to these doings, thereby losing all public sympathy and support. So there was a brutal massacre of men, while the women and children were eventually sold to the merchants of Central Asia, and the cities of Kashmir were plundered, and the rulers were helpless and they could not do a single thing to for the benefit of the citizens. 100 years after the Mongol invasion, Zainul Abidin, considered the greatest of the Muslim monarchs of Kashmir, ascended the throne. Kashmiri society had profoundly changed during this period. There had been a continuous incursion of Muslim saints and refugees from Central Asia into Kashmir, the Baramulla route providing an easy access. Another development was the rise of a series of remarkable Sufi saints called rishis who combined some features of Hinduism and Islam. Partly by the preaching of the saints and partly by force, the lower class population had been converted to Islam. So Kashmir was basically a Hindu dominated territory, but eventually, in due course of time, after the invasion by central after the invasion by Mughals who came from Central Asia, there was a larger influx of Muslims into Kashmir, and also the lower caste class populations had been converted to Islam. So there were saints also who used to visit Kashmir from Central Asia because the Baramulla route provided an easy access to Kashmir. To complete the process, a vehement persecution of the Brahmins began in the reign of Sikandar Shah. So the history actually repeats itself after a few long years. And we could see there was a persecution of Brahmins which began in the reign of Sikandar Shah in 1389. That's 800 years or now, more than that. The Sultan ordered that all Brahmins and learned Hindus should become Muslims or leave the valley. The temples were to be destroyed and the idols of gold and silver were to be melted down in order to be used for currency. It is said that these orders were issued at the instance of the king's minister, Suha Bhatt, who had converted to Islam and was being sent on harassing his former co-religionists. The situation changed with the accession of Zainul Abidin, who had all these orders cancelled. He conciliated and brought back to Kashmir all the non-Muslims who had fled. Those who wanted to revert to Hinduism or had pretended to be Muslims in order to save their lives were given freedom to do as they pleased. So Zainul was basically more into the liberal side and allowed the ones who had converted to revert back to their original religion. And for those who were actually pretending, they had the freedom to practice what they really want. He even restored the libraries and land grants which the Hindus had enjoyed. The temples were also restored. More than 100 years later, Abu Fazl noted that Kashmir had 150 majestic temples. It is likely that most of them have been restored under Zainul Abidin. So Zainul Abidin was a very prominent ruler in Kashmir, and he's also considered the greatest of the Muslim monarchs in Kashmir. Zainul Abidin continued the policy of broad toleration in other spheres as well. He abolished jizya and cloud water, and to respect the wishes of the Hindus, withdrew the ban on sati. So every religion had some or the other things which were detrimental for the society as well, but they had such strong beliefs in them that eventually the rulers had to take part, or the ruler had to restore such banned practices, as Zainul Abidin actually did that in order to pacify the hostile population of the Hindus, and he withdrew the ban on sati to respect the wishes of the Hindus. The Hindus occupied many high offices in his government. Thus, Shriya Bhatt was Minister of Justice and was appointed court physician. His first two queens were Hindus, being the daughters of Raja of Jammu. They were the mothers of all his four sons. He married a third wife after the death of his first two wives. The Sultan was himself a learned man and composed poetry. He was well versed in Persian, Kashmiri, Sanskrit, and Tibetan languages. He gave patronage to Sanskrit and Persian scholars, and at his instance, many Sanskrit works such as Mahabharat and Kalhana's History of Kashmir, Raj Rajatarangini were translated into Persian and brought up to date. So Zainul Abidin was fond of music, and hearing of this, the Raja of Gwalior sent him two rare Sanskrit works on music. The Sultan also looked after the economic development of Kashmir. He sent two persons to Samarkand to learn the arts of paper making and book binding. He fostered many crafts in Kashmir, such as stone cutting and polishing, bottle making, gold beating, etc. He also encouraged the art of shawl making, for which Kashmir is so famous. Musket making, and the art of manufacturing fireworks had also developed in Kashmir. The Sultan developed agriculture by making large number of dams, canals, and bridges. He was an enthusiastic builder, his greatest engineering achievement being Zena Lake, the artificial island in the Wooler Lake on which he built his palace and a mosque. Zainul Abidin is still called Buddha Shah, the great Sultan of by the Kashmiris. Though not a great warrior, he defeated the Mongol invasion of Ladakh, conquered the Baltistan area called Tibet-e-Buzurg, and kept control over Jammu, Rajouri, etc. He thus unified the Kashmiri kingdom. So Zainul Abidin is still called Buddha Shah, the great Sultan by the Kashmiris, and he was instrumental in unifying the Kashmiri kingdom. The fame of Zainul Abidin had spread far and wide. He was in touch with the leading rulers in the other parts of India, as also the leading rulers of Asia. A quick survey of the developments during the 15th century shows that regional balance of power could give neither peace nor stability. The regional kingdoms had, however, many cultural contributions to their credit. In these kingdoms, local styles of architecture were developed, often using local traditions. Local languages were also patronized. While some of the rulers did carry out a large scale destruction of temples and tried to present themselves as orthodox, Muslim kings overall in these kingdoms while some of the rulers did carry out a large scale destruction of temples and tried to present themselves as orthodox Muslims, overall in these kingdoms the forces of mutual accommodation and cultural integration remained active, some of the rulers anticipating Akbar in a number of fields. So, with this, we've come to an end of this chapter on the struggle for empire in North India. I'll see you guys in the next video for a chapter on medieval history. Till then, see ya. Bye.